So today's IC is basically on a very simple, very relevant, very important topic, that is pterygium. I think all of us have read through it throughout our MBBS, throughout our PG days, and still this science is under evolution. And the very concept of today's IC is pterygium from pterygium, a revolution in evolution. So that's the concept of today's IC. So our first talk is by Dr. Parihar. I think everybody knows him. Nobody needs introduction. So over to General Parihar.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alok. And I can see a charming, young, handsome Professor Pradeep Kumar.
Very good morning to you, sir.
As Professor Alok Sati has mentioned about pterygium, it's not so simple. It's very difficult. That at least 1000 BC, we have a record that Shushruta has a pterygium, and he has used this. Look at his surgical technique. Trickled into the eye to loosen the pterygium, hot fermentation by finger, rubbing that to loosen unturned part, reviewed. So more or less, we all are doing same thing with modifications. So credit goes to Shushtra and our science that even 3000 years ago they knew how to handle. And in Europe, it is 50 AD Celsius. He has first recorded a surgical approach. Here it was a needle and thread passed under the pterygium. That is again the what test we have been doing to distinguish between a true and pseudo pterygium. That's exactly so fascinating, and dangers associated with pain and blindness was there. 19th and early 20th, you can have a look on that. That's initial excision and simple of these alt in mid 1800s onward. This was the procedure which is still performed. Then we turn into the 1900 year. So many concepts were there. The first concept that the pterygium limbus only. So why not to change its direction? Thumb and piche mode in the Fauci style. It is redirected under infilonasal bulbar conjunctiva secured in suture, and believe this technique has less recurrence less as compared to the simple action of pterygium. But yes, it has some other cosmetic and other granulomatous and all those problems. That is why it has not yet proceeded. Century, this bear sclera good and need not to spell it out much on it because we all are with the fact that it has a recurrence. So what I say that whatever subsequent modifications have taken place, all those are based on D'Ombren's technique. All modifications are based on to minimize this higher recurrence of 38 to 88%. Now, why it is so broad range is given depending upon type of pterygium. And initial concept was that pterygium is a procedure to be started first in the carrier as an intern and house surgeon. Probably that is wrong. That is why initially the recurrence was very high, and now it has become like a technique which is the Alok is using takes 1 hour plus also. So probably by that time I finished 6 femtos. So that is why that is a time that I want to appreciate that the surgeons are giving to handle pterygium, and that is all with the just aim just to minimize or to achieve a zero recurrence in the post pterygium surgery status. So the Bayer sclera technique is what all the modifications have taken place. This beta radiation, beta irradiation, there were a classical applications where there something like a ring, and that ring used to be put on the limbus, and like a ring flash gun, what we use it, beta irradiation, which was used, and it was used in armed forces till till 95, 96. We have seen in army hospital that beta irradiation applicators were available, and late AVM Ahmad was uh, using this technique, and I have learned from him those days. And obviously, the associated complications, all those associated with radiation, because titration of the radiation was for different chemotherapies and radiation therapies for ocular comes in this thing a combined approach with the sliding or padded flaps. The principle of all these are basically to have the conjunctival flap from bulbar conjunctiva and used to defect. Again, this has a recurrence. Recurrence was much less than as compared to the techniques. But yes, it was a uh, little complicated procedures to perform. Then we came. These are the historical how the pterygium surgery evolved, and pterygium surgery was used in 1876. In fact, like the same thing we knew we perform, it is basically with the older concept with the newer. It is about doing the remixing of the surgical procedures, whether it is a cataract or pterygium or any other form, like the lamellar corneal graft 1960, and now we started again the LK came. So all those are coming, but yes, they are the refined, much superior techniques what our predecessors have been doing earlier. So 1892, there is a split thickness skin graft was used. The Baguette has used the lamellar corneal graft. Elshing has used conjunctival graft from the AMI, but yes, with the limbal cell. The Gomez in 1931, conjunctival that has a better ocular surface and better chances of himself. Even we are like in the afternoon we were discussing about the limb. There are the two sources. One is the limbus and second is the conjunctiva per cell. So that conjunctival graft from the fellow acts as a combination of the stem and the amniotic membrane. Amniotic membrane has revolutionized surface surgical treatment for pterygium and so many other procedures like in the management. Everywhere you have a defect, this and now we are using amniotic membrane as a tool to develop stem cells also. The Canyon in 1985, that is a canyograph. Again, it is from the old of modified, and I consider that this technique is one of the best other than what Alok is going to talk, which has recently developed 10 years ago or so. This conjunctival autograft is all of us have performed it. So I'm not going into the procedures which will be discussed subsequently. The concept, this every concept of the autografting is based on the alteration of the limbal cell is to thought to incite the to reduce the occurrence of the pterygium. Limbal stem cells, as we know, that promote faster healing and reconstruct the area anatomically, and it acts as a on the corneal surface, and that is a basic pathophysiology in the case of pterygium. That pterygium is not the conjunctiva which is invading to the cornea, but it is a pterygium entering into the corneal surface. So barrier, definitely this will reduce the recurrence in subsequent cases. This is 97 pterygium amniotic membrane used. See that ago again it was reverse life. At this time, amniotic membrane which is processed properly, it acts anti-inflammatory, epithelial development, suppression of TGF beta, facilitate healing process. Exact mechanism yet to be established, but it is full in excision of extensive pterygium, double pterygium, as I have mentioned, action of fornices which may require in cases of where the recurrent surgery, several surgeries has been performed in a recurrent pterygium. I have seen even a patient is coming after the total complete cicatrization and symblepharon has formed. One case I remember in 92, I found there was a ankyloblepharon which was pterygium surgeries. So conjunctival rotational autograft, which we have discussed. So lamellar keratoplasty, again the defect of the cornea as well as that it does not allow the further pterygium to, yes, it needs to have the donor corneal tissue, risk of graft rejections, transmission, and this can only be, now I think the requirement is there if it was excessive pterygium which has come up to the pupillary area, deeply invaded the corneal tissue. In those cases, you definitely need to have a corneal grafting of pterygium. And this technique that I discussed, very, very important to add on adjunctives, and anti-VEGF is the newer one, that it is very effective and that complications of are not seen in these cases. So, nutshell, we have definitely grown much in our management of pterygium, and as the medicine revolves, it's a explosive revolving technology. So we will have much more better refined surgical procedure for handling of pterygium. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Dr. Parihar, it was really a wonderful talk. I think you have sailed us through the ages from time immemorial till today, and it was really a wonderful talk. Now I request Dr. Ikita Ral to continue her talk now.
Thank you, Dr. Alok, for inviting me to this wonderful instruction course. And is my screen visible? Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, very well audible.
So my talk today is about pterygium excision with conjunctival autograft, evolution in securing techniques. What are the goals of surgery when we are treating pterygium? We have two major goals: to achieve a good cosmetic outcome and minimize the chances of recurrence. Dr. Parihar has very nicely talked about all the evolution of surgical techniques. So I will not discuss in detail about these different surgical techniques. What I'm going to concentrate today is about the conjunctival autograft transplant. Now, this was first described by Kenyon et al. In 1985, which gives us a good cosmetic result. The recurrence rate, although low, is variable between different studies, and this variability is because of the definition of recurrence use as well as the expertise of the surgeon. The anesthesia for the surgery can either be peribulbar or subtenens, depending on the comfort of the surgeon. And again, the position of the surgeon may be superior or temporal. Instilling topical brimonidine 10 minutes before the procedure actually causes vasoconstriction and decreases intraoperative bleeding. So before we talk about the surgery, let's understand a little bit about the parts of pterygium and what we are aiming at in the surgical procedure. The head is the part of the pterygium which overlies the cornea. The body of the pterygium is the one which is on the conjunctiva, and the junction between the head and the body is known as the neck of the pterygium. This whitish tissue that we see here is actually the elastotic degeneration, which needs to be excised and addressed during our surgery. So let's look at the first step of the surgery here, which is the excision of the pterygium head. This can be done in different ways. So in the first video here, what I'm doing is I'm using conjunctival scissors and going along under the neck of the pterygium to free up the tissue. And then I'm excising it with the conjunctival scissors, including the degenerated pigmented area that we sometimes see along the neck of the pterygium. Then I'm using two sharp forceps to strip off the pterygium tissue from the corneal surface and using a number 15 blade to make sure that we don't have any residual tissue. The other way to do this, as I'm demonstrating in the next video, is first stripping off or avulsing the head of the pterygium from the corneal surface and followed by excision at the neck of the pterygium. Again, we are using a number 15 blade here to make sure that we have a clear cornea and no residual tissue. Once we have achieved this, the next step involves dissection of the subconjunctival tissue. So here what we are doing is that my assistant is grabbing the subconjunctival tissue with another forceps where I'm holding the conjunctiva, and we are using a combination of blunt and sharp dissection techniques. So I'm going in with my scissors closed and opening my scissors as I go inside to achieve a good dissection and avoid buttonholing of the conjunctiva. Once we have freed up this subconjunctival tissue, we are excising it, and then we can measure the defect that we have created and harvest a appropriately sized conjunctival autograft. Again, I'm using the technique of blunt dissection here, and our aim is to achieve as thin a graft as possible, taking care that we have a minimal amount of tenons in our graft. A subconjunctival lignocaine or BSS can also be used to first make the plane smooth. After that, I am instilling fibrin glue here. The fibrin and thrombin components are being used separately in two 1 ml syringes, and then the graft is being positioned in its place. It is very important to iron out the graft properly and to remove any excess overhanging tissue on the cornea. This step ensures a good cosmetic outcome to the patient. This is the end of the procedure. And another technique that we can use is to secure the graft with sutures. This video has been shared by Dr. Namrata Sharma. We can see here that this is a very large pterygium and a lot of the cornea has been involved. So after dissecting the tissue from the corneal surface, this degenerated tissue is being excised. And we still see that we have a large amount of residual tissue on the cornea. So a crescent blade is being used here, trying to make sure that we do not create multiple planes and we have a smooth dissection. This would ensure minimal amount of astigmatism. So we have to be very careful in these cases for the underlying corneal thinning, and might be worthwhile to keep a lamellar graft just in case the cornea is really thinned out. After harvesting the conjunctival autograft here, it is being secured in place with the help of 8-O vicryl interrupted sutures. So this is the other method of securing the graft. We can use interrupted sutures to ensure that the graft remains in place. And since in this patient there's a large epithelial defect, a bandage contact lens is being applied. So where do we place the sutures? If we have, this is the graft in this case where my mouse is, this is the conjunctival autograft here. What I typically do is that I place these 8-O vicryl sutures at all the 4 edges and another one over here to make sure that the conjunctival autograft is well apposed. If needed and we feel that the apposition is not good at the limbus, 2 additional 10-O Linol sutures can also be placed at the limbus. What are the advantages of using fibrin glue over sutures? Shorter surgical time is one of the greatest advantages. In the Cochrane review, it has been found that on an average, it takes 17 minutes lesser. Patients are more comfortable. They complain of lesser watering and foreign body sensation post-operatively. There is some evidence to suggest that there might be lesser chances of recurrence. And of course, there are no suture-related complications. Now, the surgical time especially becomes important in patients like these. We can see that this is a patient with pterygium and a very hard mature cataract, and this patient has a double-headed pterygium. So in these patients, we do not want to have a very great amount of surgical time. So just to quickly run over this video of a double-headed pterygium. So again, what I'm doing here is that I am excising this tissue at the neck and making sure that the head is freed up at both the nasal as well as the temporal side. And once we have achieved this, this head can be stripped off from the corneal surface, which is being done on nasal and temporal side. And then we are using the sharp as well as the blunt edge of the number 15 blade, making sure that we have a smooth dissection. And then we can go ahead and remove all the degenerated subconjunctival tissue, taking care that we do not cause any buttonholing over here, and we can achieve a smooth dissection. This is subsequently being excised, and similar step is being rotated or is being performed at the other side as well. It is very important to measure and mark in these double-headed pterygia because we need a graft which is large enough to cover both the defects. So this step becomes important in these cases. After getting the conjunctival autograft, we are dividing it into two and then securing it in place using the fibrin glue. So if we had to use sutures here, it would definitely take us much longer to finish the surgery. And with the glue, this becomes very, very easy. It can be ironed out very nicely, and we can see that the apposition is also good. So at both the sides, we have managed to harvest enough amount of autograft to secure it in place. And this is the end of the surgery. Now, what are the disadvantages of using fibrin glue over sutures? It is much more expensive, and this is very relevant in the Indian scenario. Not all patients can afford fibrin glue. There is some low level of evidence to suggest that there might be higher chances of graft dehiscence when we anchor the graft with fibrin glue. But this graft dehiscence depends on a lot of factors, including preparation, manipulation of the graft, the surgical experience, as well as eye rubbing by the patient post-operatively. So what can we do to minimize these complications? There are a few tips. First is to achieve as thin an autograft as possible. Secondly, to dry the scleral bed before we apply the glue so that it adheres well. Application of the thrombin and fibrinogen separately so that we can achieve a nice thin layer of the glue, and it also gives us the time to make sure that our graft is secured in place. Trimming off the excess glue is very important. We can see here that I'm using scissors to trim off this excess glue, because if we don't trim and we pull or we remove the wire speculum without trimming the glue, we can actually pull the graft along with it. We must educate our patients and ask them to avoid eye rubbing post-operatively. Another technique of securing the graft is use of the patient's own blood. Fresh capillary blood is made to use, and the fibrin in the blood adheres the graft. But this technique has been associated with some complications like subconjunctival hemorrhage, graft edema, graft retraction, and most importantly, graft loss. Therefore, this is not my preferred choice when it comes to pterygium surgery. Post-operatively, the patients are prescribed steroid, antibiotic, as well as lubricant eye drops. So the take-home message here is that conjunctival autograft is the current standard of care for most of our cases. A thin, meticulous preparation of the graft helps us in achieving a good cosmetic outcome. Anchoring the graft with glue gives us again a good cosmetic outcome, reduces the surgical time, and is much more comfortable for our patients. We must remember to trim the excess glue at the end of the surgery to avoid graft dehiscence. Thank you for your kind attention. And before I end my presentation, I would like to thank all my mentors who have taught me this beautiful surgery. Thank you.
A very wonderful talk, Dr. Ikeda. Very nice surgeries. I don't know from where have you got such a good collection of surgeries, eh? And you're mentioning that you don't have. Anyways, now I request Dr. Pradeep to shoot some questions to Dr. Ikeda.
Ma'am, very interesting videos, and the finish of the surgery definitely remarkable. One small thing I wanted to ask, when I saw those pigment marks where you had marked limbus on the conjunctival autograft, and while you were positioning it,
Yes.
you moved the limbal part towards the
Yes.
fornix, and the routine normal conjunctiva, which was directed towards the fornix. So do
Yes.
you believe that when we move the autograft, the limbal stem cells should be placed along the excised head of the pterygium, or the other way around? Both ways work.
Yes. So actually, in these double-headed pterygium, most important is that we cover the defect on both the sides adequately. So in this case, I actually had a buttonhole, and I excised it in such a way that the buttonhole comes within my excision. That's the reason why I rotated the tissue and I did not place limbus to limbus apposition, which we would normally do. The studies indicate that there is no additional benefit actually in these cases of including the limbus in the graft. So there is no additional benefit of actually doing a limbal conjunctival autograft as compared to the normal, just the conjunctival autograft itself, which indicates that even if we flip it, it won't make too much of a difference to the outcome in these kind of patients unless we have an associated large limbal stem cell deficiency. So that was the reason why in this particular case, I rotated the graft. But normally I do, when I'm excising the graft and I'm taking the tissue, I do orient my graft limbus towards the limbus.
Exactly, and that is what. So I believe you also recommend that moving from limbus to limbus is the ideal technique. That is great. That's great.
Yes, that would be the ideal. But most important when it comes to orientation is that the epithelial, the conjunctival epithelial side should be up. That orientation definitely we cannot change, and that should always be maintained.
Yeah, Vijay, any point from your side?
No, I think they discussed it nicely. Normally, I also maintain the limbus to limbus orientation. So that's it.
So I unfortunately did not have any videos of suturing technique because I don't use sutures. Most of my cases I do with glue. So that is what I was mentioning to Dr. Alok, that I don't have any videos of the suturing technique. But Dr. Namrata was gracious enough to give me one of her own surgical videos.
So a very thank to Dr. Ikeda. I wish that you should continue in this session. You can give your own points. I know you have another session right now going on. So
I would have loved to continue in this session. It's a very, very interesting topic to me. And, I'm sure the presentations are going to be wonderful. But I apologize for leaving early. I have another parallel session. I will definitely try to join back again in a while. Thank you.
Till then you can continue with us. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, Dr. Vijay, Colonel Vijay, I don't think he needs any introduction. We all know him. He's a wonderful surgeon, wonderful corneal surgeon. And I always consider him as my guru in refractive surgery. He has taught me, all the nuances of smile surgery. So I really owe a lot of respect to him. Now over to Vijay.
Thank you, sir. My slides are visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Thank you for such a wonderful introduction, sir. So I'll be taking the surgical aspects of pterygium a step further. The surgery, the perfect technique, PERFECT. Is it the perfect technique for primary and secondary pterygium? So this is what I am going to discuss over next 8 to 10 minutes. So as Parihar sir had brought out, that pterygium is being operated for about more than 3,000 years. There are more than 50 types of surgical techniques for treatment of pterygium, and there are more than 1,500 peer review articles in international journals. But have we reached that level of perfection that recurrence rate is near zero? Not till now. But yes, one technique as described by in 2008 by Dr. Lawrence Hurst, which is known as perfect technique. It may have near zero recurrence, as I'll just go on and elaborate on the various aspects of this. Now, what is this perfect technique? Perfect stand for pterygium extended removal followed by extended conjunctival transplant. How it is done? Now, this is a animated video followed by a surgical video. So how it is done? First, the pterygium is transected at the limbus. Conjunctiva and tenons are dissected. The corneal part is removed. Then, this is the dissection of conjunctiva, and then followed by hooking the muscle like a medial rectus if a nasal pterygium is there. And then conjunctiva and tenon extensive dissection is carried out for conjunctiva and tenons. And once this is done, then this part is removed. Now dissection may be as much as 10 to 12 millimeter away from the limbus till that much time. And then a graft, conjunctival graft is harvested after measuring the size, and this graft is shifted over to this area, which is now free from conjunctiva and tenons. And then it is sutured or placed in position by either putting a fibrin glue or sutures. So this is the surgical video. Now, initially marking is done. Marking is done till the caruncle. So it will be, I request the AVs to please switch off that alarm. This is a new topic just started. So I request AVs to switch off that alarm, please. So this after the marking is done, then the pterygium is bisected at the limbus. So after this bisection, bisection of conjunctiva and tenons, then the corneal part of the pterygium is either stripped off or it is dissected finally, maybe using a crescent knife as a regular technique. And this part is removed. Now, once this part is removed, now the next part comes is the blend dissection of the conjunctiva and tenons. And once this dissection is being carried out, we go posteriorly till we reach the muscle, and hemostasis is achieved. And once you achieve the hemostasis, then you hook the muscle like this. And once you hook the muscle, it's that time when we go beyond that, muscle is hooked, and then further dissection of the pterygium is carried out. Now here, the important thing is removing the tenons and the conjunctiva extensively for 10 to 12 millimeter beyond the limbus. The tenons around the muscle and over the muscle should be excised nicely. Why it is important to remove the tenon is because in recurrent pterygioms, what has been studied is that tenons also has a lot of fibroblast and angiogenesis factor, which causes recurrence of pterygium. So once this is done, then we measure the area, the size of the graft required. We also polish, or we also smoothen the surface of the cornea from where pterygium is removed. The eye is pulled down downwards, and a conjunctiva is marked for the size of the graft that needs to be taken. So once this marking is done, then a conjunctival graft is harvested. It is important to remember at this point that there should be minimum or no damage to the tenons down below, and if possible, as little hemorrhage should happen there, because otherwise it may lead to if there is a damage to the tenon, it may lead to problems subsequently. Now, once a graft is prepared, then you put a fibrin glue at the surface, and this graft is placed over the area where the tenon and conjunctiva has been removed. Now, once this is nicely in place all around, I do put a few sutures posteriorly whenever a perfect technique is being done, because here, if a graft displacement occur from around the muscle part, it becomes difficult, and again you have to take the patient to OT at that point of time. So it's better to put sutures posteriorly, at least if you're using a fibrin glue. Otherwise, you can put 5 sutures as was shown in the animation technique. So once this is done, this is the final appearance. The graft is in place. And the best part is when you remove the speculum, there is hardly cosmesis. It's wonderful cosmesis. You can't see the graft at all, because it goes under the upper and lower lids and on the medially up to the caruncle. So now what are the various literature studies available about this perfect technique? In 2008, it was first time described in 250 patients with the primary pterygia, and the patients were followed up for 1 year. There was 0 recurrence. In 2009, 111 patients with recurrent pterygia followed up for 1 year, 0 recurrence, excellent cosmesis. And then 2012, another study with 1,000 patients with primary and recurrent pterygia was published. They were followed up for 1 year. 1 patient out of 1,000 patients had a recurrence. Rest all no recurrence, but excellent cosmesis. In 2020, 1,000 patients again who underwent primary and recurrent pterygia surgery using the perfect technique. This is the longest study for the pterygium available, with largest number of patients for more than 10 years, 0 recurrence and excellent cosmesis. So is perfect for primary pterygium? The aim of pterygium surgery is no recurrence and excellent cosmesis. So you can see 0 recurrence, and excellent cosmesis, and same results for the recurrent pterygium, 0 recurrence, excellent cosmesis. If you compare these results with the other techniques, the results with the perfect are much less in terms of recurrence rate. There are some problems also with this procedure. One, it's slightly longer than the standard procedure. You need a meticulous tissue handling in this. There may be a transient diplopia because you are handling the muscle. Post-operative pain is slightly more than a conjunctival autograft. But ultimately you are achieving no recurrence and better cosmesis. So this may be surgery which is going to be near perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So Vijay, I think it's a wonderful surgery that you have done. And I know it is very tedious surgery. When one does it, then only one realizes how tough it is.
Yes.
And I have always taken the support of, squint specialists for this. Sanjay, you must be knowing it.
Yes,
Sanjay
yes,
used to assist me uh, during the surgeries.
sir.
So you can imagine how nicely you have done. I think you have become now even the squint specialist, if I'm not wrong. Huh?
Maybe necessity is the mother of invention. We don't have any twin surgeon here.
Yeah. So it's really wonderful to see your operation, your surgery, and your talk. I request General Parihar to speak on this and ask something from Vijay.
So I don't like to add anything on Vijay because of
Sir.
Vijay means is itself is glorious. And I have seen him growing, and I have a tremendous regard for his simplicity, unamusing smile with tremendous professional commitment to the surgical expertise as well as perfect this thing. I hope Mrs. Vijay is not listening by all these good words.
No,
Is
sir.
I am really proud of my younger generations. I mean it means because
Thank you. Thank you
we
very much.
have suffered a lot. We had so many problems of equipments, etc. But they have taken things well ahead of it and doing lot of publications, doing good work, and making the armed forces image much larger than what we could do it in our time. So I am really happy for us. Nothing can be better that my younger generations, my students, they become at least 5 times better than me. So and that is why, because whatever teacher I had, probably they had a better teacher than what I had.
So you
Okay.
have been our teacher, sir. You have been the inspiration.
I can't tell this, but I wanted to get it from you. What I'm
True.
telling,
Thank you
Alok,
so much.
Alok, Vijay, all Pradeep, everybody, Dhar, Jaya, Sandeep Gupta, all are doing excellent job. We have a
Thank
very
you.
strong ophthalmic team now.
Sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Now, after a lot of praises, Vijay, I think now we move on to Colonel Pradeep. Pradeep actually, he's the most genuine person I have found, in the sense that, I just requested him because he's taking a talk of Dr. Sayan, and Dr. Sayan's mother is not well. So he has to take over the talk uh, from him, and he kindly agreed to this. This speaks volume about this gentleman, and I'm sure he'll do full justice to this. I would like to tell about him is that he is a vitreoretinal surgeon par excellence, no doubt, but he also has keen interest in pterygium and has adopted suture-less, glueless CAG techniques way back in 2010. He has been gold medalist in NBE, and this is a news to me that he even represented the central zone in swimming. So there is no doubt that we have a wonderful person with us today. Over to Dr. Pradeep.
Good evening, sir. And this is such a pleasure to be talking amongst my mentors, General Parihar, who has taught me as an undergraduate, Colonel Vijay, from whom I took over Tejpur, and he has been the real mentor for me for my surgical skills that I have today. And definitely Colonel Sati, who has been helping me out in my career here. So my interest in pterygium starts from way back in 2010 when we were doing our post-graduation. And we started learning that glue is not required in all the cases. It was the study of Dr. KPS Malik, which came out in Nepal Journal of Ophthalmology, talking about glueless sutureless technique, which prompted me to try this during my PhD stay. And I presented twice at AIUS for glueless sutureless technique of pterygium and use of alpha drops, that is eptaclonidine, prior to surgery to reduce the bleeding and have a subconjunctival hemorrhage-free bed post-surgery. So my talk will be slightly dry. It's more of an academic talk today. So here we can see the normal conjunctival structure, where we see the beautiful multi-layered conjunctiva in the epithelium, and the subconjunctival tissue does not show too much cellular presence. Now compare that to the pterygium on the right-hand side. Now we find that a lot of neutrophils have invaded, and the presence of fibrocytes, which is coming up as the eosine stains on this particular microphotograph. And it has been talked about that the causation of the disease, so the P53 oncogene mutation and the onset because of ultraviolet radiation is there. But there is something very specific about the recurrent pterygiums because of their aggressive behavior, which is seen in these microphotographs with the presence of inflammatory changes, where we see that not only the structure is cellular with increased fibrocytes, but we also have a large amount of WBCs present in this structure. And though the standard treatment remains conjunctival autograft, and the recurrence rates have been reported close to between 3.5 to 9.6%. But these recurrence rates become significant for the population of our country when we consider something close to about 6% as the mean average. The activation of limbal stem cell deficiency because of ultraviolet radiation occurring predominantly on the nasal aspect of the limbus because of increased reflectance of sunlight from the nose, and a second hit caused by p53 oncogene activation leads to this pre-malignant sort of disease. Now, where we find a similarity between this so-called pre-malignant disease with an inflammatory disease like Panus following chemical injury has been deliberated upon as late as 1989. So we are confused whether it is truly a pre-malignant disease or it is an outcome of an inflammatory change. Now, even people have come up with the concept of Fuchs flicks, which are shown here on the electron microphotograph. And we can see that there are pre-malignant changes which occur in the region. So here comes the role of mini slit, the technique I am speaking about today, which is a mini limbal epithelial transplantation. Because in this technique, we combine the anti-inflammatory properties of amniotic membrane graft along with reducing the pre-malignant potential of recurrence by transplanting limbal stem cells. So the mini slit technique in 2015 was first spoken about by the Eric Hernandez group, and we had taken up this idea and tried to replicate in one of our Army tertiary eye care centers in a randomized controlled trial between 2015 and 2018. So we picked up consecutive patients with primary nasal pterygium encroaching at least 2 millimeters into the cornea. We tried to exclude ocular surface disorders like Stevens-Johnson syndrome, pseudopterygium due to injuries, hypersensitivity to any blood component, though we did not come across any during our selection criteria, and any positive serology for HIV and hepatitis B unless that they are working against the immune-mediated mechanism of the host. It was a simple computer-generated randomization sequence, allocation concealment was done, and we tried to have a sample size of minimum 40 patients to provide 95% confidence interval with 80% power to the study. And this is the surgery that was being performed, that we were mobilizing the pterygium, dissecting it out, clearing out the bed of all the residual pterygium, moving an amniotic membrane into place, sticking it up with glue, and the most important part coming now, where we will now take a limbal stem cell as close to the limbus as possible, taking out a little bit of the clear corneal tissue along, splitting it into pieces, putting glue, and putting these pieces over the limbal aspect of our amniotic membrane. And we were following up these patients up to 6 months after the surgery. So the primary outcome measure was the recurrence rate, while we also had secondary outcome measures of how much operative time we were having, the post-operative symptoms, and any other complications in these cases. We tried to scale the post-operative symptoms based on how much foreign body sensation, lacrimation, and irritation that our patients had. So overall, we were able to pick up 92 eyes which were randomized. The 10 eyes were lost to follow-up, and we had 42 control eyes in the conjunctival autograft group and 40 study eyes in the mini slit group, which completed at least 6 months of follow-up. The age and gender matching of these two groups was almost similar, as we can see. One very important point that we picked up was that the occupation of most of our patients was outdoor occupation like agricultural workers. And the preoperative best corrective visual acuity was similar in the two groups. Now coming to the results, we found that out of 42 eyes which we had taken in the conjunctival autograft group, there were 4 cases of recurrence, while in the mini slit group, there was only 1 recurrence. Though when we applied statistics, the p-value could not achieve significance, but this definitely shows a trend towards reducing recurrence in cases of mini-slit stroke. The operative time, as has been brought out, is an important issue during surgery. It is slightly increased in the mini-slit stroke because while you are unrolling the amniotic membrane, placing it correctly, dissecting out the limbus and splitting the limbus, it takes increased time, which is a statistically increased time of almost up to 6 minutes. But as you see in subsequent slides, the results match up when we compare the outcomes. So the ocular discomfort criteria between the two groups were almost similar, being a tad higher in the control group. And when we see the complications that occurred, they were slightly different in the two groups. Whereas in the conjunctival autograft group, it was the graft retraction, replacement, and subconjunctival hemorrhage which predominated the post-operative complication. It was the displacement of the limbal pieces which was of concern to us, and subamniotic membrane hemorrhage in the mini-slit group. Now, this is the process of a conjunctival autograft group which most of the analysts and attendees have seen, that by 14th day, the autograft starts merging into the neighboring conjunctiva, and by 6 months, it almost disappears to where the borders can be made out. While in the mini-slit group, we realize that this is a slower healing process, and we are able to make out the amniotic membrane quite clearly up to the day 28, and it's a slightly longer healing process. But it definitely helps us reduce the outcome, so we favor this technique. And the current study highlights that there is a positive trend of less recurrence, and also there are decreased post-operative symptoms and overall post-surgical complications in the mini-slit group. Why this difference is less? Because we are trying to repopulate the abnormal limbal stem cells of pterygium with the normal limbal stem cells that we have picked up during this surgery. So picking up the limbal stem cells and repositioning them at the margin of cornea and conjunctiva, I feel is the most important step in any form of surgery that we do to prevent recurrence of pterygium. Also, amniotic membrane itself has anti-inflammatory properties, and that is what is leading to lesser amounts of post-operative symptoms in our mini-slit group. Now, this question I already answered during the talk, that yes, there is an increased post-operative time, but when you look at the avoidance of few recurrent surgeries and the decreased discomfort to our patient, definitely the increased post-operative time is justified. And yes, we believe that the mini-slit technique is advantageous as it restores the normal anatomy of the limbus, it preserves the conjunctiva superiorly, and it is suitable in patients with limited amount of conjunctiva because hardly any length of conjunctiva is picked up. And even in my cases of post-PR surgery where the entire 360-degree conjunctiva has been mobilized and you have a recurrence, this technique can be safely used. And this study is unique that it is the first of its kind comparing mini-slit techniques with the conjunctival autograft. And secondly, this study has given us a hope that we will be able to perform pterygium surgeries in future with minimum recurrence or no recurrence at all. And considering the impact of mini-slit technique in less recurrence, and it further validates the point that ultraviolet light-induced limbal stem cell dysfunction is the one which is causative in the occurrence or recurrence of pterygium. So to conclude, I will say that we recommend mini-slit technique as a suitable alternative considering the effectiveness in reducing the recurrences, in less post-operative discomfort and other complications. And definitely we recommend a larger trial, a multi-centric randomized control trial, to find out whether this technique is effective in hands of other surgeons and our results can be reproduced. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pradeep. You have sailed through this whole presentation so easily, and I'm really amazed. And wonderful talk that you have offered to all of us. And I think your oratorship is also quite great and good. It's very well done, very nicely presented.
Thank you.
Now I request Vijay to ask something to Pradeep, and also General Pariyar, आप भी बताइए कुछ इनको.
I would add first, because 6 o'clock I am live on India News.
Oh,
on
sir.
So, Pradeep, yes, he is a great orator, and he has mentioned about his UG days. I remember he had participated in cataract symposium, and the material what he got it, I can boast it. Even the fellows in cornea and cataract, they cannot get it even today. What he got it as an undergraduate, and he has a
Thank you
big
so much, sir.
optics to view through the X-ray, beyond the X-ray, and that is why I believe radiologist is in your house, isn't? But
Dermatologist, sir. Dermatologist.
Dermatologist.
Sir,
But he has a big optics to go ahead. He is a great orator, very pleasant person, and a extraordinary skill he has as an academic. I am sure
Thank
he
you,
will
sir.
excel in future too.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your blessing.
Sir, you can ask some question related to this topic to him, sir. Since this topic is quite dear to him, because he himself has suggested that it's quite useful in patients who will be undergoing VR surgeries, because in repeated VR surgeries, we expect a lot of Tenon's touch and a lot of fibrosis.
Yes, that fibrosis not only in VR surgery, even in shunt surgeries, you find all these things are coming. So he is well presented. I need not to add on much, because now I have act on the third session now there.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pradeep, I have one question to you.
Yes, please, sir.
It was, first of all, you presented it very well. It was wonderful. I have seen your work on pterygium, and I have discussed with you earlier in 2010 and onwards when you were doing it at Tejpur. So what I want to know from your perspective, from VR surgeon's perspective, is there any role of anti-VEGF agents in hypertrophic vascular pterygiums, preoperatively, intraoperatively, or after, to prevent the recurrence?
So the only role which, to my mind, I understand is that while we are doing the surgery on the table, if we are injecting it into the area which is just besides the limbus, it reduces the anti-VEGF properties of the sublimbal tissue which we are leaving behind, because we are never able to scrape off the entire head of the pterygium, even though it might look like everything is gone. If in the scleral bed we inject the anti-VEGF agent, that is where it might help. But using it as drops or using it as a injection into the graft, I do not agree with that technique. I have seen it on so many presentations, people using anti-VEGF in that, but I do not agree with that technique at all, because the mechanism in this anti-VEGF effect is very transient.
Pradeep,
Sir,
said my presentations and on pterygium and use of Avastin, 11, and we have done histological evaluation of this thing with the control groups and with the mitomycin.
Sir.
We found that the use of anti-VEGF subconjunctival injection at the graft site does make changes. So it's not out, it is better than mitomycin C. Definitely, where you scleral thinning and all those complications, corneal endothelial changes, etc., due to mitomycin are not seen here. So it has a promising this thing in future.
That is, it may be a safer alternative to mitomycin C, sir. That is, and there are a lot of angiogenesis factors in pterygium recurrence. So these may take care of those. But only thing is preoperatively, how much preoperatively or intraoperatively it should reach the site. So those things, I'm not clear about that, but it may have some roles. Sir. Yes.
Yeah, but I personally feel that if you look into the etiopathogenesis of recurrence, it is basically the fibrosis from the tenon. That is what is the cause for recurrence. So definitely when we call anti-VEGF, they are anti-fibrolytic also, if I'm not wrong, Pradeep?
Yes, sir, because they have an anti-inflammatory property, so that definitely fibrocyte growth will be reduced.
So definitely it will have a role. I think we require more detailed study in this, because it matches with the etiopathogenesis actually. So we
That
can
is
definitely.
same as I was elaborating, and I believe General Parihar has already said that if we give it subconjunctively in the scleral bed, that is the place where it acts best, because the molecule of anti-VEGF is we go and stick at the anti-VEGF receptor. But once we start using it as topical drops, I very strongly doubt that topical drops of Avastin are going to help. It is the injection of
Yeah,
Avastin
It has to
in
reach
the
the site
conjunctival
of
bed that will
angiogenesis.
help.
it has to reach at tenons actually.
Yeah.
That is the
Yes,
seat
sir.
of recurrence.
Yes, sir.
I think now I should move to the last talk of the session. It's my talk. Uh, I don't know who will introduce me.
I'll do that, sir. I'll do the honor. So, Colonel Alok Sati, as I think everyone is aware, he is a prolific corneal and refractive surgeon. He is a professor in Army Hospital R&R, LVP pass out. He has brought laurels to the LVP and at LVP to the armed forces. So he'll be going ahead with this talk. He's the chief instructor of the session of this IC. So we invite Colonel Alok Sati for his talk, please.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you. So is it visible?
Yes, sir, we can see it, sir.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So my talk is basically a combination of Vijay's talk and Pradeep's talk. I have taken a bit from Pradeep's talk. I have taken a bit from Vijay's talk. That is what is PermeSlit. PermeSlit is a combination of perfect technique and the mini slit. So I have taken per from perfect, and mini slit, of course, I have taken into it. So why this concept has come? This concept has come basically, I think Vijay may be knowing this. This is in RR only this concept has come. 61 years old female has come to us, and she had recurrence with pterygium twice, underwent the gold standard procedure, that is CAG twice elsewhere, again had recurrence. And she's also a known case of primary open angle glaucoma. So she told us that it's not possible. I did not want any further recurrence. That's what her comments were. So definitely, is there any answer to that? Can we afford to give a zero recurrence to a person who has already suffered by repeated pterygium surgery, and even that pterygium surgery has led to the symblepharon formation? She had ocular restrictions also. So yes, there is an answer, and this is what is the perfect technique. But the issue with perfect technique, what Vijay has brought out, is that we have to retrieve a very large conjunctiva, because we have to cover from limbus to medial canthus. And in bargain, what might happen is one can touch onto the tenon that leads to the fibrosis. And since she's a patient with glaucoma, so if she, if in future a trabeculectomy is being planned in her, then it would be little difficult, because there may be failure of trabeculectomy because of fibrosis. So can we advise this technique in this patient? Of course not. So what we did, we thought of it, we modified this perfect technique to PermeSlit. So what we did, what Vijay has highlighted, we did that as a pterygium extended removal. We extensively removed the pterygium from the limbus till medial canthus. We exposed the entire, medial rectors, but instead of putting the graft, we place the amniotic membrane and we place the limbal pieces. And this is how we evolved this technique as PermeSlit. And what we found that the post-op follow-ups, we have seen wonderful results with this technique. So far, we have done 5 cases, and we have found zero recurrence. So this is how it looks from the beginning to the end. And even you can appreciate that there is no symblepharon now, and the ocular movements are full. The only issue was with this, because Sanjay was involved in it, so he was very fond of doing all this. So he said, sir, there is 2 prism diopter of PBCT. Maneka, it's okay. 2 prism diopter is acceptable to us. Then these are the results of the further, 3 more cases we did. In one of them, we had the granuloma formation. Otherwise, remaining, we excised this granuloma and subsequently the patient was fine. This is the patient with double head pterygium. We adopted the similar technique, same technique in this patient. And this is this after 6 months. We can very well see that there is no recurrence and there was no ocular restrictions. So I have already told the thought process, how was it evolved. So when it was evolved, when the patient was after us that she wanted a recurrent free surgery. So what we did in that evening, we reviewed the literature. And when we reviewed the literature, we found that there was an article from Dr. Hurst from Australia that perfect technique gives almost 0 recurrence. That is 1 in 1,000 in primary pterygium. So further review of literature has found that even in recurrent pterygium, there was no recurrence with this technique. But the issue was very clear. We cannot afford to sacrifice such a large conjunctiva. So that's how the technique was evolved from perfect to permi-slit. And this is how it evolved. This technique provides most of the pros of both these 2 techniques, perfect and mini-slit. Like we have complete and extensive removal of the pathology. In addition to that, we are preserving the conjunctiva. We are offering a very good anti-inflammatory benefits of amniotic membrane. And we have achieved replacing the pathological stem cells with the normal. So we are mostly combining the pros of both these procedures. This is a short video which I would like to show you this technique. This is a video we did at RR Hospital only. You can see that since there were a lot of adhesions, so we started from the head. And this is what we are removing, the symblyferon, if you look at. This is a thick fibrotic tissue under the conjunctiva. And then this step is, I'm not doing this step. This is basically Sanjay who is doing this step. So I took the help of squint specialist in this. And he has very well exposed the medial rectus. Now there is a perfect, now this is the, our oculoplastic surgeon is doing this. This procedure, I remember Sonali was doing this procedure, it's Fornix formation. So we 3 combined actually this procedure. Then now my turn came and I put, amniotic membrane. And did the mini slit as was described by Pradeep. We placed these pieces at the limbus, made them adhered with the fibrin glue, and then subsequently we placed the bandage contact lens. So we had hindrances in form of exophoria, but that exophoria is, it's not very great. Granuloma we had in 1 patient, and this we subsequently excised. So what is most satisfying is that there is no recurrence with these 5 cases till now. There is no symblyferon reformation in the first case. A good cosmesis is there, and we haven't found any ocular restrictions. And the most important, what evolved around the thought process was that the conjunctiva preserved for, if at all, future glaucoma surgery. So this technique seems to be beneficial in patients with recurrent pterygium. It needs to include more patients to finally conclude the results. Thank you.
That's beautifully presented, sir. I think especially the preserving the conjunctival part, that is the biggest advantage of this, in addition to almost no recurrence. So I remember the time when this study, research or this topic was being conceptualized, and when you were doing it, the first case, it was beautifully done. The first case, no recurrence. It was difficult surgery, difficult cases, but it has come out so well. I think you should now. This series is good, long enough. You can go ahead and declaring it.
So Vijay, I need 3 more cases, so you can refer some case from Calcutta to me, please.
Oh, sure.
Recurrent pterygium.
Absolutely,
I
sure.
need 3 or
We'll do
more, because at least 9 cases to be there. So if
Yes.
you have any recurrent pterygium, you can send to me. I'll definitely include you in that.
This was wonderful. But this was wonderful. And best part about this IC is it has been structured so well, starting with a historical perspective and then going step by step higher. It's wonderfully structured IC. I hope its recordings are available subsequently for others to see. We can share it. It's wonderfully structured IC.
Any comment from Pradeep, sir? Anybody?
I'll only say that the techniques that we have demonstrated during the IC are reproducible. That is the most important takeaway part from any IC that do people learn. And I'm very sure that anyone who has attended will be able to include these techniques into their practice, because this is something which is doable. Like most of the times we see surgeries and we feel baffled at whether we'll be able to do these surgeries in our own OT. But here, I'm extremely sure that people who have attended will learn to include these in their own area. That goes a long way. And thank you so much for including me in this IC, sir. Thank you for this big opportunity.
So with this, I really thank all the wonderful speakers we have. There is no doubt, I know in and out of all of you, and you have been great support, great help, and I really owe great respect to you all. Thank you, everybody, for this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Bye, Pradeep. Thanks.
Good day, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for keeping this in time. Thank you so much.